Anna is a young woman, about 25, slim, petite, pretty, and graceful. Living in the home counties, the town she lives in is not very exciting, nor, to be honest, is her job. A shop assistant in a large supermarket. Also, in her experience, she has found the local young men unexciting too. When she first started dating, she was somewhat inexperienced. She was willing to try things, but found all her encounters disappointing. There was always something missing, though she couldn't put her finger on what it was. But Hannah had a decidedly exciting secret life. In the past year, she had discovered a website for people, men, women, couples, engaged in or looking for primarily sexual encounters, a swinger site. She had been intrigued as she explored the site, fascinated by what sort of lives the people on the site had. Initially horrified, the more she read, the more envious she became. She had always been a very sexual woman, but suppressed her sexuality, almost ashamed of it. But as she read the site, she came to understand that many men and women too accepted and celebrated their sexuality without shame, and indulged her urges without regret. She started to understand that the way she felt, the urges she had, were not to be ashamed of, and she started to feel an affinity with strangers on the side. At first, she felt she couldn't possibly actually participate in this lifestyle. The idea was unthinkable, but over the course of a few weeks, the idea formed and grew in her mind. Why not put on a profile? Inevitable, she wrote a brief profile. Almost immediately, she was inundated with messages, mostly from single men, and almost all were monosyllabic, crude, vulgar, pointedly sexual, and often downright offensive. After deleting them, she then received a second wave of messages. From some of those declined that were abusive. Not what she had expected. She reset her filters to exclude messages from single men. This considerably reduced the numbers of messages, but some men got around it by registering as a couple, even though the female half didn't exist. But she persisted, and over the next few months had a number of meetings with couples, some of which proved disappointing. There were others where she finally found what she was looking for. She found she preferred older couples, who she found less selfish and more concerned with her pleasure. And as time went by, she started to realize that it was the female attention she preferred rather than the male. She wasn't sure whether perhaps she was a lesbian, or maybe it was just that the ladies seemed to have a better understanding of her body and her needs. In her work, she had a lot of contact with the public. Here too, she was often the object of unwanted attention. On an almost daily basis, she received comments. Her innocent prettiness drew everything from requests for dates to obscene propositions. But if she had to deal with a lot of lowlife, there were also some customers who she came to like. Regular customers who treated her with respect and civility, and would exchange a little insequential chat. One such was a man she knew as Wilf. Wilf was in his early 60s. He always shopped alone, and always exchanged a few words with her at a checkout. He was charming, funny, and polite. Never once did she feel uncomfortable in his presence. He took care with his appearance, well-groomed and dressed smartly but casually. His shoes always polished. He had a twinkle in his eye and an easy smile. He had served in the military in the past and had retained his slim-fit physique, pride in his appearance and bearing. Hannah had occasionally wondered what he had been like when younger. One day, Hannah was placed on the customer service desk, and a young woman came to the desk to give her a wallet she had found in a car park. Hannah took the lost wallet and checked it to see who it belonged to, and was surprised to find Wilf's picture looking at her from his driving license. She couldn't find a phone number, but saw that his driving license had an address on it. The address was just a short detour from her walk home, and she decided to take it to him personally after work. She finished work around 8 p.m. It had been a fine warm day, and she set out on the walk home still in her company uniform. Dark blue skirt that she had shortened slightly to just above the knee, and a white blouse with the company logo on the left breast. She was bare-legged as she walked. She enjoyed the cool of the evening air on her slender legs. She turned off her usual route home down the street, where Wilf had his home, and walked down the road counting the numbers till she found the right one, and took the path through a neatly tended garden. She found the front door slightly open. She intended to call out as she opened the door, but the hinges squealed as she pushed it, and she heard Wilf's voice coming from the door on the left. "Come in, Archie. I've started without you." She pushed open the door. The curtains were closed, but it was not dark. Wilf was sitting on a seat with his back to her, watching a large television. She was suddenly thrown into turmoil by the realization that he was watching an explicit pornographic movie. He was not in any state of undress, but Hannah felt acutely embarrassed that she had caught him out in his guilty pleasure. She had no problem with pornography. She watched it herself, but found most of it just terribly done. The content very rarely showed anything she would recognize as a real sexual encounter, and the fakeness of it all, from the acting to the plot to the silicone breasts, disappointed her. Just as she was resolving to sneak out quietly, Wilf turned around, his face fell, and reddened immediately. He fumbled for the remote control and turned off the TV. His mouth moved for a few seconds, but no sound came out. Then he found his voice again. "Oh God, I'm so terribly sorry. I don't know what to say." Hannah simply said, "I brought you your wallet," and extended it towards him. As Wilf reached out dumbly to take it, the front door squealed again. A man entered the room about the same age as Wilf, equally fit-looking but more strongly built. Pale-skinned with short-cropped ginger hair and a broad smile, he spoke in a strong Scottish accent to Wilf. "Who's your friend?" Wilf mumbled introduction, and the Scot, whose name was Archie, turned a broad smile to Baron Hannah. "Pleased to meet you," he said. Wilf explained that she had come from the supermarket to return his lost wallet, and then fixed Archie's eyes and said, "When she came in, I thought it was you. The TV was on." Archie took this in and then burst into laughter. "Oh my God, did she catch you, you know?" Wilf was still looking miserable. "I just turned it on. I'll have you know I was decent." Archie turned to Hannah, still laughing. "A shame about your timing," he said. "Another couple of minutes and you'd have caught him with his todger out." Despite Wilf's clear misery, Archie seemed to think the whole thing was hugely funny. In fact, a few more minutes, and you'd have caught us both sitting here with our torches in our hands. Hannah felt the laughter building up in her. Giggling, she turned to Wilf. "I'm not at all offended," she said. "I think it's funny too." Wilf seemed to lighten up a little. Archie spoke. "If this lady had taken the trouble to bring you your wallet back to you personally, then where are your manners? The least you can do is offer her some refreshment." Wilf straight away asked Hannah if she would like a cup of tea. Archie stepped in. Alternatively, he said, "We always have a couple of bottles of wine in for these evenings. Would you prefer that?" Hannah simply nodded. Wilf went out and came back with 2 bottles and 3 glasses. He poured out a generous measure to each. Hannah took one and sat down on the settle in the middle and motioned to the 2 men to join her, one on each side.